Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to your Friday edition of the Trader Merlin Show. It is your weekend edition. It is a whiskey edition, nonetheless. Don't worry, these are not the custom glasses I've been talking about. It's an old Woodford Reserve one, I guess. Starting to fall apart here. Anyway, cheers, y'all. Hope you had a great week. Yeah, today was one of the most boring days of the year so far, at least for me, because I was gone for 2 weeks. But yeah, flat, kind of boring, which is why I drew this picture or didn't draw it. I had AI draw this picture to give you a little sense as to what we're talking about here, which was, yeah, boring. The guy's laying in his chair, just kind of snooze fest out there. That said, I did find some opportunities here, and I'll update you on my portfolio changes and the positions I closed. Starting the year off with a loss. Didn't have too many losses last year, but starting off with one this year. All right. So let's dive into just that trading week wrap up. What are some of the bigger stories? Of course, it would be remiss if we didn't talk about President Trump and the tariff threats, because that may have more impact and uncertainty for our markets. Whether you're pro-tariff or anti-tariff, again, it's irrelevant. What is uncertain is the fact that Trump is saying, I may put tariffs on those that don't support our acquisition of Greenland or attempt to acquisition of Greenland. I'm in the camp of just leave it alone. But hey, I'm not a political person and know the value of Greenland from a strategic perspective. But going forward, depending on how this does get pushed through, do we start to see a legitimate offer to take over Greenland by purchasing it? Or is there a hostile takeover and it's just an invasion? I mean, hey, we just went into Venezuela and took that over. So wait, what's to stop us from Greenland? I'm sure the military force is a bit lower there. Uncertainty brings back that uncertainty piece, which markets hate. And I actually thought we'd see more volatile markets today. Here's your daily chart so we can see just what's been going on over the past few weeks, or actually a few months. Today really didn't have much of an impact. I thought we would see bigger swings here on the Friday going into a long weekend. Of course, markets will be closed on Monday for Martin Luther King Day. Even if I go down to a 5-minute time frame, it really wasn't that eventful. The opening hour or so definitely had some movement, and then not a lot going on there. So rather boring day. I thought we'd see a bit more action because of these comments from President Trump, not only about making an offer for Greenland, but also about, not if someone doesn't support what we do, then we're going to tariff them. And this just goes back to bullying politics, right? If you don't do what we like, then we're going to make it harder for you one way or the other, which I don't know. I guess I'm not a big fan of. This is a big piece, though, in market volatility going forward. So keep your eye on this. I think next week this will be a much bigger topic, as we'll see how serious he is with regard to these tariffs. Remember, we just had a bit of positive piece with what went on with Taiwan with the chips. We saw Micron have a great jump off that one, and several others were doing really well. But Micron had a big day up today, up 7.76%. Whew, loving that Micron chart there. But these more tariff threats. What happens if Taiwan says we don't support the Greenland thing when you put the tariff back on? I mean, this is just that stuff we don't want. We don't want that uncertainty and confusion from the financial market perspective. Just give us calm, collected, steady policy and let the markets trend, and then we can all do well whether the markets go up or down. So that was your big piece for me, at least for me today, was that monkey wrench in the plans of what's going to happen with Greenland. See, Wolf says, I heard today he may be offering each resident of Greenland $100,000. I wonder if Greenland residents realize that would pay about 4.5 years. Interesting. It's $500,000? Wow. You know what? How long do you have to be a resident there? Maybe we just move to Greenland real quick, become a resident, and then just take that money and just come back to the States with it. I mean, you'll probably get some people doing that little arbitrage there if it is $500,000 or $100,000. Still a lot of money to some people. So the orange man making it difficult for these markets. Again, I thought we'd see bigger pain because of the uncertainty here. I thought we'd see more market downside move. And I was looking at building materials today. Didn't pull the trigger on it just because I didn't feel comfortable with it. Anyway, didn't Fran move troops into Greenland to protect him? I don't know about that, Lisa. One thing that I try not to do, and I know it's difficult being a host of a show like this, is I try not to watch the news so much. I really try not to watch the big headline news. Not only does it depress me, news, I felt like when I was growing up as a child, news actually had some positive pieces to it. And it seems today, like, if you have positive news, no one wants to see that. What they want is pain, suffering, torture, just the shock value news, and I just don't need that in my life. So I generally don't watch news programs at all. Social media and a couple I will say influencers is where I kind of look to get news headlines from. But yeah, I'll start the day every day by looking at Yahoo Finance, and that's just really to see what the people are thinking. I rarely read through those articles, but yeah, Lisa, the news is too depressing. Life is challenging enough. I want to make it as good as possible, and the news, I think, creates fear, creates anxiety, creates tension, and we can do without it. Along that same line, you guys might remember a while back we had President Trump greenlight Nvidia. And greenlight Nvidia from the perspective of they can now send their chips to China, which were blacklisted for a while. We can't do that because we don't want China to have any sort of advantage in this AI race. Well, this took an unexpected turn. I did not expect this to happen, but from an issues perspective, China has said, well, we're not going to allow the H200 chips into our country. And I'm not quite sure on what the logic is here. Did a little bit of research on it, and essentially China feels that their manufacturers of chips are just as good, if not better, than Nvidia, so we don't want their product in here. We're going to keep domestic products. Now, if you're President Trump, now all of a sudden you start to have more problems with China, right? Because President Trump made an agreement with, I would agree with you, Andres, it probably is a national security issue. I mean, I have no clue what's in those chips. And, just like the Biden administration didn't want Chinese products over here for that same thing, national security issues, Trump may have that same issue there. This piece here is going to be interesting because I think Jensen Huang said there's about a $50 billion market for them to jump into China here with just that H200 chip. And all of a sudden, if that's off the table, that could be a significant dent in their revenue. Really not a big day with regards to impact for Nvidia. It was only down 0.44%. And I think Nvidia is probably still on a high from yesterday's news about the tariff reduction for Taiwan and infrastructure being built in the U.S. for chip manufacturing. So not a bad drop here considering the news from China about Nvidia's chips. So those are two my major pieces here, major headlines. Wolf says Trump is losing leverage on China every day. Well, and that's what scares me because what'll happen is he'll do something really dramatic, a shock factor piece, and I'm bullish on these markets. I want these markets to continue to trend. We talk about the trend is your friend till the bend at the end. I mean, here's your S&P. It's hard not to go long, right? So I want to be long. I definitely want to be long in this market right now, but the longer we move up like this, the more likely and probable a correction will come. And when you have something like this Trump issue, the China issue, if that starts to escalate, that could have a real big drawdown on this equity markets in a very short window of time. So my green flag has turned to a yellow flag, more of a cautionary flag because of the tensions that are building. And, Trump is the master at building up tensions and then making them super intense tensions and then appeasing things very quickly, the old taco trade. But either way, it makes things very challenging. And fortunately, most of my positions expired worthless, which I look to be as a good thing. We'll talk about here in a little bit. All right, Big F says, why did Coinbase CEO reject the Clarity Act provisions yesterday? Yeah. Several different reasons. The primary one has to do with a stable coin not being able to pay out interest. So there's a lot of issues in the Clarity Act that show favoritism towards financial institutions. One of those is if you're a stablecoin issuer, you can't pay out the interest that you earn to your end customers. And I don't understand the logic from a political perspective on that one. I think that that's a silly move. If I'm Circle, who created USDC, right? I could show you a stable coin here, but it really won't do you much good because it's going to be sideways. USDC, and let's do that against, against the US dollar, just to show that. So here's USDC, right? Should be pegged to zero and just pretty much go sideways. If USDC issues, Circle issues USDC stablecoin, they're going to be making right now roughly 3.5% interest on the money that they hold based off of the requirements in the Genius Act, which are you have to hold U.S. Treasuries of 93-day maturity or less, you have to hold your money in U.S. registered banks, which are paying interest, and you have to keep that money with the repo market at the Fed, which is paying about 3.5 to 3.7%. So they're earning interest. Why shouldn't Circle and USDC be able to pay that interest out to end users? His argument is that banks, because they're not supposed to pay out this interest, it would be banned from these stablecoins to pay out interest. You lose an incentive, right? One of the incentives for me to buy USDC has been that I'm earning 3.5% over at Coinbase, and it's changed. Let's go and show you Coinbase right now. Boom, let's go Coinbase, and I'll hopefully don't have to log in here. Perfect, I don't have to log in. If you look at portfolio, and I go to I think I took all my dollars out. Yeah, I took all my USDC out because it wasn't earning anything. So there's no benefit to me to have USDC now. But if you go to Coinbase One, and you are a customer and you pay this monthly fee, you can earn up to 3.5% or 3.5% for USDC. Under the new provisions, that would be banned and not allowed. And his argument is, why shouldn't I be able to pay that out? I'm not looking to make profit on this. I just want people to be using USDC, so this is their reward. They get to keep the profits that technically they earned off that money. So if you are paying 3.5% interest right now, and you look over at somebody like JP Chase, let's see, Chase Bank interest, NTEREST, interest for savings today. Let's go out there and look at this. Here you go. So what stablecoins are doing is not fractional reserve lending. What they're doing is they're taking your deposits and they're putting it in other investments, which are safe. You can see here right now, if you have a savings account at JP Chase, you're earning 0.01%. So what they're fighting for, what these banks are lobbying in the Clarity Act, is that they cannot pay out this interest. Why? Because if Circle pays out 3.5% interest, JP Morgan's going to lose customers because they're only paying 0.01 and they're fractional reserve lending. This is the flawed system, right? They're paying you almost nothing at JP Chase or Wells Fargo or Bank of America. So what's happening, and you're both right, Steve and Big Ab, banks are trying to keep their leverage. Because as soon as you can buy a stablecoin and earn 3.5%, many of you in this room right now would move your money over to stablecoins. I would. I already have. I was earning, at the beginning, I was earning 4.2% for that stablecoin, and it's been dropping because yields on short-term treasuries have been dropping as well. But yeah, that's one of the main reasons he's pulling his support for it. It's really showing favoritism to the banks. And of course, the banks are lobbying right now for that. The other side of this is the reason we're seeing it stalled is there are many people that want put into the Clarity Act that political officials, and we're talking elected officials, cannot be involved with crypto. Of course, that is designed to go after Trump because Trump is heavily involved in crypto. Personally, I agree with that. I think it's a conflict of interest. As a citizen, I think it's a conflict of interest. As a trader or investor, fine with me, let him get involved with it. Because if I know he can get involved and he's going to make money off it, then I'm going to buy into crypto as well because he has enough power to move that market and make himself some profit. So different ways of looking at it, but right now most of the Democrats are stalling on any sort of agreement because the Republicans are not willing to put that piece in there, which is politicians, elected officials cannot be involved with crypto. And it was specifically designed to go after President Trump. So Big Up, that's the main reason, is it basically takes some of the power away from Coinbase, because Coinbase's advantage would be they get to pay out that interest. They're happy with that because it brings in more customers to them, and that those customers are going to come directly from people like JP Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. Let's see, what do we got here? Sorry, it was he can do whatever he wants. China has moved past it. Sign huge. Yep. Do you think Meta will rally into earnings? I'm not really sure. Obviously, I'm not sure because trading does what markets want it to do. But if you go look down here, let's go look at Meta. I'm looking at the chart of Meta right now, and overall, I'm bearish, right? You have to kind of be bearish on this one simply because, the clinking in the background, Lisa? This one? Yeah, that's me. That's me with my little whiskey glass. Sorry, I was spitting my ice cube. I'm getting it cold over here for my whiskey. The tricky part of that question about do I think that Meta is going to continue to rally here, Dwight, is I got to think about what the overall market's going to do. I thought that the news that came out yesterday would have been very good for tech. That news with Taiwan, I think should be very good for overall tech. However, when we look at what happened out there today, look at your Magnificent Seven. Let me sort these by gainers to losers. You have a lot of red. Now, Apple, I actually wanted to open a position short on Apple today, but of course I can't touch it. So I was really getting disappointed here. I think Apple has got more downside movement. It looks like it's turned the corner. It's broken a pivot low. And now to me, it looks like it's going to be dropping back down towards that 245 mark, which is, another $10 from here. Presents some good opportunities for shorting of Apple. Now, other Magnificent Sevens. Google was down 0.8%, but still in a phenomenal uptrend, so nothing concerning here. Nvidia. Look, Nvidia has been sideways since July of last year, and it doesn't look great. However, we could make the argument that over the past couple of months, it's starting to develop a little bit stronger of an uptrend. It's making some pivot highs, which is okay, but I don't see a lot of real growth here from Nvidia. And again, because it's the number one component of the S&P and of the NASDAQ, this does put a lot of risk onto the markets. That if something that has been dragging it up and has the biggest weighting is languishing and not doing much, I don't expect to see big market gains. When we see market gains slow down or things start to roll over, what happens is people start to become pessimistic and they start to take some profits on positions, which can escalate a downside move. So Nvidia is one I'm definitely keeping an eye on, because if this starts to break down further, I think it could have a much more profound impact on the overall equity markets because of its percentage weighting. So keep your eye on Nvidia. Tesla today. I actually sold some puts on Tesla today. I've been wanting to get back into Tesla. Hasn't dropped as far as I wanted it to, but I did take a position today on Tesla. I'll share that with you here in just a little bit. But I really expected to see more positive stuff from tech based off of yesterday's news. Maybe this was smoothed out, if you will, by the tariff talk from Trump and the aggressive stuff with China that went on today. Meta, again, lower lows, lower highs going all the way back into August of last year. So I'm still not that excited about Meta. Yes, you've had a 2-day bounce for Meta, but I don't know if I believe this will rally. Honestly, Dwight, I have to say I'm kind of on the opposite side here. I think that you'll probably see Meta drift lower. It just seems like what the trend is. I've got some old yellow boxes. Let's get rid of those ones that don't mean anything anymore. Let's get rid of that. Bam. Let's clean our artwork up here for 2026 on our Meta chart. But yeah, I'm not, I gotta say, I don't think you'll see Meta rally up here. It just doesn't feel strong at all on this daily chart. So I know that's probably not what you wanted to hear, but it is what it is. Let's see what else we got. He has all kinds of chat going on here. Steve Will says, until Meta, Microsoft get going, the NASDAQ will be stuck and hard to break all-time highs, in my opinion. I agree with you 100%. We could look at the triple Qs here. I mean, that picture is a ascending triangle, right? And it's not perfect, but for those that know, one of my favorite patterns is the ascending triangle. And basically what you're looking for is the highs remaining roughly the same, and you're looking at the lows getting higher. So this is an ascending triangle. Based off of that pattern, which again is my favorite, one of my favorites other than the individual candlestick patterns, based off this, it should break to the upside. It should technically break to the upside because you've got the buyers pushing it higher. You've got the ceiling remaining the same. At some point, one of those is going to give. And the probability based off almost everybody's analysis in this space is that the breakout will be to the upside. So it certainly does look bullish for the NASDAQ, but it just hasn't really been able to find that momentum. And I keep asking myself, where's that momentum going to come from? I was a believer that some of the macroeconomic news that we just witnessed might be the catalyst for that move to the upside, but we're not really seeing it. Now, of course, you look at some of these companies here like Microsoft. So Microsoft's got earnings on the 28th. So we're not looking at next week, it's the week after. So 2 weeks away from Microsoft having earnings. Amazon is going to be the same week, the 29th. You have Meta, we report that same week on the 28th. Tesla is going to report a week, the 20th. So 28th is really a monstrous day for earnings announcements. Nvidia, of course, is always the outlier. That's going to be several weeks down the road. Google is 3 weeks out on February 4th. And Apple will be 3 weeks out as well. Or sorry, 2 weeks out on the 29th. So a lot of big earnings announcements happening in 2 weeks, which of course would be the factor that I think determines where our market goes for the rest of January and possibly February. If those earnings numbers don't come out rosy with high expectations, I think you'll get that pullback. And where's Oliver in here to call me Mr. Negative Nancy? But look, Apple's chart already looks pretty bad. I think it's the worst one of our Magnificent Seven right now. Even though it had a phenomenal uptrend since April, that trend is over. It's done. And the question is, how low is this thing going to go? Right? How low is it going to go? 1 second. Let me close something out here real quick. I have a I have a window open, and you keep getting, I think you can hear all the beeps going on in your background, and I don't want to get rid of that. Let's get rid of it. Hopefully you turn it off. All these is playing both ways. Good. There you go. That's the way it should be, right? Have no bias and just let what happens happens. Let what happens happen. That's how I'd be looking at it. All right, let me get rid of that. So I'm definitely not looking very optimistically at Apple. Google for sure looks great. That's the lead dog right now. Nvidia, again, the sideways action doesn't make me feel very confident like it's going to be pulling this market up. Good. I'm glad you didn't hear the beeping. It was Teams was popping up on my screen, but I'll get you a little more ice clinking here as soon as this is finished. Nice little bit of whiskey for a Friday afternoon. Been waiting a long time for that one, so this one's for you, Lisa. There you go. We got a little cube action for you. All right. I agree with you, Steve. He says Google's holding the whole thing up. I mean, if we look at that Magnificent Seven from the top to bottom, Microsoft looks like trash. Microsoft downtrend, lower lows, lower highs. That trend is over. It's moving down. Amazon showing some strength, but not looking that great. I actually am more bullish on Amazon than I am on Apple and Microsoft for sure. I went to sell the 230 puts today, but there was almost no premium. Almost no premium for Amazon puts for next Friday, so I decided not to go for it, unfortunately. I really wanted to get more. As you guys know, I got out of my Amazon at 240, so I'd be buying back at a discount, but maybe I'll get a cheaper price on Tuesday. Your Meta looks pretty bad, lower lows, lower highs. Tesla looks fantastic here. Spinning, refresh, Big Ollie, refresh. So here you've got another good example of an uptrend that has not quite broken yet, right? You've got, you had a pullback in November that did break that trend, but ultimately came back right to it. So I'm definitely bullish on Tesla, which is why I sold some puts on Tesla. Here is a rundown of all my trades. So let me run through them from the top to bottom for you guys, for those that are following along. MicroStrategy, those expired worthless today. I sold the 149 puts, and I actually went to try to sell some more today, but premium wasn't there. There's what happened with MicroStrategy. I sold the 149, collected a little over 1% for the 5-day window of time, which is great. Rivian, there's my first losing trade. I did not want to take Rivian home. Let me just get the right ticker symbol, RIVN. Yeah, I just didn't want to own this one. It had a pretty bad announcement a couple days ago, which caused this real big drop. I was in the the 1850s, and closing out today in the 1680 range. So it took a nice hit there. Getting about $2,500, almost $3,000 worth of losses. Not great to start, but that's fine. It offset with all the other trades that I had. But yeah, it does say my current stream is not working for you guys. You guys all getting spinning tops? You shouldn't. My internet connection looked pretty good. Yeah, I got a warning on it. It says that I am sending low bit rate out there. Strange. Hopefully that'll get fixed here soon. All right. Well, hopefully it gets fixed here. So yeah, I closed this one out. There's the Rivian piece. It was not good. Bummer. I was thinking of keeping it and just taking the shares and selling cover calls against it, but I just decided against that. Probably not a good idea, especially when you have a chart that looks this bad. I mentioned yesterday that you get down to 1650, you're actually coming into the origin of this big move. So part of me was saying hold it because you're going to have a bounce in Rivian, but it's just too speculative, and I just decided not to. So we dumped that bad boy. Unfortunately, took a loss. Number 2 or 3 on this one was Coinbase. Obviously, Coinbase's news today, I thought might have more negative impact, but I didn't close them. Those expired worthless. I had the 235 puts on that bad boy. We were right about there today at 241. So, yeah, I didn't want to roll it. I just didn't want to roll it, Mickey. I didn't want to roll that Rivian. Just didn't feel like it was worth it. With Coinbase, though, that was a nice rate of return. A little over 1% again. I sold the 235s, collected 239 for the week. And that expired worthless. So 2 of those 3 expired worthless. There's a modification I need to make on this screen here for you. Let me make this modification pretty quick, so hopefully it doesn't mess up the show and keeps my flow going. Because the Tesla there at the bottom, that is not a closed position. That is a current position. There we go. Amazon. Had my Amazon 230 puts. I still have those. Those are those for next Friday. So I went out a little bit a week there. I collected 162, so it's not great premium, but that is also for the 230 puts, which you can see on my screen here. We're quite a ways away. I'm feeling confident that we won't get down to 230 on this one. If we do, I'd be fine owning it. It'd be a drop of about another 3.87% for this one to execute me. Silver. So we've talked about SLV, and I had bought puts on silver directionally, which I don't do a ton of directional on the account I share with you guys here. We did have a nice sell-off yesterday, but not enough to get me down to my $70 strike price. So those expired worthless. Luckily, it was only one. That was the smallest position I had, so it's only $476 loss. No big deal. There's a ton of grade premium, but it depends if you're buying or selling, right, Lisa? And then finally, I've got Tesla. That's a new one here for me. I want to own Tesla. I think Tesla's going to make some announcements here with regards to Optimus and the steps they've made with Optimus. I am not going to bet against Elon Musk. I actually want to be in his camp, in his category. So I am a bit aggressive on this one. I think I really was aggressive here, but let me put the line on the screen at the strike price. Again, my strike price was $432.50, which is very close to current price. It's not like we're a long ways away, but you can see part of the logic there. We are in an uptrend. We're making higher lows, higher lows, higher lows. And it does feel like this low point that we put in here on January 8th, that low being 424.37, kind of looking at that as being the floor for this one for a move to the upside. Yeah, SpaceX IPO is going to be a big talk. Integration of Tesla in that. And there's just so many factors. But Optimus Robot and the taxi pieces, the rolling out of the bus, I think is going to be an important part as well. So I sold the options expiring next Friday. Collected $485, which is a little over 1% on that bad boy. So those are my position updates for you guys. Since the responses I've been receiving via email from many of you have been like, share more of that, share more of that. I'm just going to share the one account with you. I don't, sharing all my accounts and showing everything I'm doing, unless you guys are paying for that, I'll keep the bigger accounts, keep those ones private. But I'm sharing these ones with you. At least this one account, the Trader Merlin account. If you exercised when you bought it for 428-ish, that's okay. If you want to correctly, Big Ed, that's exactly why. I'm fine. I'm fine to own it. If you look at the strike price here plus the premium that I'm receiving for it, basically I'm looking at about $428, actually $427 and change is what my strike price would be. And I'm okay with that long term. It's a decent-sized position. It's not a small one. So I've got quite a few contracts of this, and we'll see how it happens next week. I was looking for a lot more opportunities today. I wanted to deploy more capital. Given the way the S&P's been moving, it's kind of slowing down a little bit. I didn't see any great premiums today from a selling perspective. And, of course, I could have jumped on SLV, as I know Lisa was talking about. That is great premium, but also great risk. Right, there's some pretty risky components to this bad boy, and I don't want to bet against silver by selling puts. I'd rather buy a put directionally short. I'd buy a put and know my maximum risk here. If you're selling puts on silver, there is the potential that all of a sudden this thing drops 20 or 30% in a day. I know it seems inconceivable, but look how much this bad boy has moved. I mean, just from these lows from November to where we peaked out a couple days ago was an 89% move. That's driven by supply and demand issues, and we talked about it yesterday. There's a lot of factors why this could continue, but could we see, let's say, a 20% drop in a couple of days? Yeah, and that would bring us down to about $67. So if you're out there selling, the $75 strikes, and this could blow through that, there's just a lot of risk involved with that. So I decided not to go for the silver puts. But you look at some of the markets that I follow on my right-hand side of the screen here. Mainly I'm looking at these sector ETFs. Well, nothing was down big today. I look at the Magnificent Seven. Nothing was down big today. You had Apple down 1%, which looked appealing, but I can't trade Apple anyway, so that's irrelevant. Crypto, let's go to crypto. There was definitely some real big movers in crypto today, but I'm not actively selling puts on crypto. If anything, I'm going to be using IBIT and ETH, but I just didn't. I'm long IBIT in another account. And I have a wheel strategy going on with that in another account. And yeah, nothing going on with ETH. I think it's I need to get long on Tesla, but looking for 410. All right. Well, my selfish side of me, Big Ab, says I hope it doesn't get down to 410. If it does, I might sell some more puts there. But yeah, I'm definitely long-term bullish. Remember, you've got Elon Musk who will get paid a colossal amount of money if Tesla achieves certain goals. And that's just, I'm not betting against Elon Musk under any circumstances. I just can't do it. I just can't do it. Lisa says, our Don Prawn group discussed something cool yesterday. I used ChatGPT to analyze a spreadsheet for all my Tesla trades and asked for specific feedback. Maybe, I have not done that. I've not used ChatGPT to analyze your trades. Now, you guys remember, I do a show every year where I talk about the importance of going back and looking at trade analysis and reviewing what you've done. You're giving away a lot of personal information if you use ChatGPT or Grok or Anthropic or any AI software to do that type of analysis for you. You're giving them private personal information. Some of these statements, have your account numbers on them as well, so you might want to delete the account numbers when you upload the images. But that's actually a really good tool, because if it's smart enough, it'll go through and analyze the win-loss ratio. No account statements or numbers. I'm curious what you added there, Lisa. Alex says, when SpaceX has its IPO, does a lot of retail money leave Tesla and go into SpaceX? No, I think the money stays in Tesla. I think you're going to get new money pouring into SpaceX, which will have a phenomenal. I'll also have my own spreadsheet. Okay. What you probably can do is you probably can send in your actual statements. I would scan them, and I would block out your account number and your name and address and all that type of stuff. I just take any personal information, remove it from the statement, but you could send in your trade sheets, and I'm pretty sure that AI would be able to analyze it and say, oh, you make way more money with this stock versus this stock, and you use this strategy is better than this one. That's an interesting thought. Definitely something to explore. Speaking of which, as you guys know, for the last few months of 2025, I was in a very aggressive diet plan, trying to cut fat, trying to reduce my body fat, trying to work out 6-7 days a week to build up muscle mass. Of course, while I was in Thailand, I didn't do a damn thing other than eat and relax. So we took a couple steps back there, but I'm back on the cutting phase for another 2 weeks. Cutting not as in physical cuts, but cutting weight, cutting fat predominantly. Weight, I'm not too worried about, but fat is it. So today I was at Costco. And I use a specific protein powder called Optimum Nutrition, which some people say is good, some people say is bad. AI says it's a 7 out of 10. And as you all know, I think that when you buy things, you should wait until that item goes on sale. Every item goes on sale at some point. So I was at Costco today, and I got my cart, and I went to grab the Optimum Nutrition, which is $15 off right now, which is a great deal. It's over 25% off, or 20% off. So I grabbed it, and right next to it was another protein powder I'd never heard of. And I actually took my phone. I took a picture of the front of both bags of protein powder. They were the same price. They were both heavily discounted. And I scanned both and said, which one of these is better? You know what my objectives are. I was surprised, man. It literally broke down both bags of protein powder by all their components. And it said, Optimum Nutrition, don't buy it. You don't want that one. That's a 7 out of 10. This other one, which I can't remember the name, it was a 9 out of 10, all organic stuff, minimal ingredients being added to it, much more amino acids, and it said, absolutely go with the other one. I would never have known that unless AI had done that research for me, and now I'm on a new protein powder, y'all. We'll see how that works for you. But anyway, use AI as much as you can. I don't know why I went on that tangent, but thank you for that one, Lisa. Now, Elon's robot is brain dead compared to Boston Dynamics robot. I don't know if I would believe that now. Boston Dynamics robot is pretty awesome. I'm not going to bet against Elon. He's got tricks up his sleeve. I bet you the robot is pretty badass. I'm willing to bet you that thing is way better than what you think it is right now. Let's see. DOJ is a good redacted. That's a great one. There's so many great memes about like what's the safest place to be. Is like right now the safe place to be is in the oh my gosh. I totally forgot the guy's name. Whatever. The Epstein files. You look bigger? No. No, Big Wolf, I'm not. But I will get... I'm actually trying to maintain the exact same weight, but lose the body fat. The goal is to have that six-pack back. Markets overbought. Will selling to see the bottom. Must wait for the big pullback. Well, markets have been overbought for years, Michael. That's the tough part. Markets have been overbought for years. I mean, and just to drive home that example, let's bring up the S&P 500. And again, you guys are welcome to use any index you want, but if I put this on a weekly time frame for the S&P 500, pick a point in which you want me to tell you this was overbought. again, I've used this many times. You look at these two drops here. These are the dot-com bubble and the financial crisis, which are two of the biggest declines in history for financial markets. And then all of a sudden, we went like this. Wah! I would argue we were overbought in 2018. I'd argue we were overbought in 2019. I'd argue we were overbought in 2021 and 2024 and now. But you know what? It doesn't matter whether I think we're overbought. The markets continue to go up, and they are built to go up. So yeah, I'm not so worried about that. Even though I believe heavily that these markets are headed for a big correction at some point, I'm long. Why? Because that's what this market is doing. So yeah, while I agree with you, Michael, and others that are in that bearish camp, I'm in the bearish camp. You can't go short this market yet. You can't. Look at the chart. There's zero signal, and I mean zero signal, that this is going to go down. Right now, it's just trending strong. And when it does, of course, you can always go, see, I told you, but you would have said that back here in April of last year, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I'm not a believer this market's going to crash yet. So there you go, Oliver. I'm bullish. Did you hear that comment? Mark the calendar, Oliver. Merlin was bullish. I've been bullish for a while, but I just keep saying we are going to crash at some point, which is true. When it happens, I'll be like, see, I told you so. Yeah, Dan says, dude can catch monsters rockets with chopsticks. Yeah, I think Elon Musk robots are going to be amazing. I want it to happen sooner rather than later so I can buy one. I want a robot. I just walk around my house today going, man, I need to do so much homework. So much homework. Bring it on. Bring it on. I want to, not homework, housework. Exactly, Andres. We've been waiting for a recession since 2022, and I would argue even before 2022. It just seems like the improbable, and it is improbable. What our market has done has been absolutely unbelievable. But what is it a result of? Spending, money pouring into the systems, record earnings for companies. But companies will not always have record earnings, right? All good things come to an end. What goes up must come down. We all know those stupid phrases. It's just the challenge as a trader is when you jump in front of something and try to say it's going to turn today, that's the problem. Which is why I'm always waiting for confirmation as opposed to trying to pick the tops and pick the bottoms. Let the market prove itself. Could the market drop this year? Absolutely, Robert. Yeah. I mean, look, right now you've got President Trump stirring up a bunch of different conflict issues, right? He's putting ultimatums out to Iran, which luckily have gone by peacefully. He's making aggressive threats whether to acquire Greenland by buying it, or I think a few months back he made statements that said we could just take it. Hostile action. And I think a lot of people laughed at that, like, oh, come on, you're talking at your butt, buddy. However, what did we just do with Venezuela? We went in there and took over. And now all of a sudden you have stuff escalating with China. So it could happen at any moment, but I can't live with that fear of it's going to happen today or the next day or the next day. I have to just go with what the market's doing. And the market is trending higher. There's no argument. If you can look at the Dow, I mean, if you tell me this thing's ready to crash, I would say you're smoking crack, right? If you told me that this is about to crash, I'd say you're smoking crack. If you told me that this market is about to crash, I'd say you're actually closer. This is the Russell 2000, by the way, that I'm looking at. Sorry, for the podcast, because I just showed the Dow, I showed the S&P, which are phenomenal uptrends. Here you go with the Russell, which is ripping to the upside, all-time highs. I mean, Russell is absolutely soaring, and you had a hesitation candle today. With something like the Russell, even though I'm bullish for the markets overall, on Tuesday, this might be a nice potential short opportunity here if we get below 264 on the IWM. Why? Huge rally. Again, I say huge rally. Let me give you the numbers specifically. That rally went from January 2nd to our peak today, rallied 8.69% in 10 trading sessions. That's not normal. That's 2 weeks. This thing has rallied almost 9%. And that's blowing away any historical norm, right? So this is due for a correction. I don't mean that this trend is over. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that this has a much higher probability of having a correction next week. And what does that correction look like? Well, could it drop, let's say, 3%? Sure. And if you're short with the futures contracts, great. That's huge money. But I'm not going to bet against this market yet. The only one I took a gamble on, and it was an absolute gamble, was shorting silver. And it was on this gap up day. I think it was December 26th. It was a big gap up day, and I sold the 70 puts. And I was actually profitable for 2 days, 3 days, and then just screamed to the upside. Mickey says, RTY, a bull flag coming in. Let's go to RTY. I usually look at the ETF, but we can check that one out. Well, you got a long way to go before you start forming this flag, right? Right now, all I can say is you had a hesitation day, a day of indecision, which can go either way. But usually after a really big rally and you have a hesitation candle, usually that's a sign that you're going to get some profit taking coming in. So we'll see what happens next week with the Russell. But the only other one we have here, I showed you the NASDAQ, I showed you the Dow, I showed you the S&P, and here's the NASDAQ. The ugliest one in this picture is the NASDAQ. I didn't think I'd find myself saying that. It's been the very big, since last year, it's been the NASDAQ, been the leader, and all of a sudden that has shifted. We've seen big shifts there. Dow is amazing, S&P is amazing, the Russell absolutely fantastic, and then the NASDAQ, wah, wah. So tech suffering right now. But Michael, and others that are overtly bearish, that's fine. You can be overtly bearish, but have stop losses in place, because if you're wrong, you're going to get clobbered. And that trend right now is definitely better to the upside. Steve says he's going after Iceland as well. Ay. When will the madness stop? When will it stop? Okay, let me go to your economic calendar. We got a bunch of stuff happening next week. Today was a non-event day from an economic perspective. You did have Governor Jefferson talk about the Fed pausing on rate increases. So I have not updated my spreadsheet or table here of all the different Fed participants and what their viewpoints are. But next week, obviously no show on Monday because markets are closed. So we'll go straight to our Tuesday session here. You would think that because markets close on Monday, we get a little bit of a economic announcement flurry on Tuesday, but you see here, there's nothing. You really have nothing going on for U.S. markets. On Tuesday for the British pound, though, you've got claimant count changes, and you also have Governor Bailey will be speaking for the Bank of England, so that may give you a bit more volatility going on with the British pound. On the earnings front, I don't have my earnings calendar here. Let me bring that up for you. The earnings calendar is pretty good next week. Obviously, we've got a couple weeks to go before we get the Magnificent Seven stocks in there, but there's some good names reporting Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week. Here we go with your earnings. Less than 1 hour, Ken. Absolutely. I can't do 1 hour shows every day. Plus, it's the weekend coming. I need to celebrate. So Netflix start things off with, that doesn't start. It's aftermarket close on Tuesday. But you also have 3M, United Airlines. Let me sort these by market cap. Interactive Brokers, U.S. Bancorp, Fastenal, D.R. Horton. I already mentioned United Airlines. Fifth Third Bancorp as well. Lots of financials coming in here. I'm not smart enough to understand which of these regional banks is going to have more exposure to commercial loans, real estate. That's beyond me. But this will give the media a lot more talk track with regards to the health of the financial system, which banks might be in trouble because of loans that they've made, and commercial real estate has always been a topic of discussion here, particularly in the Bay Area, which apparently is doing much, much, much better. But that will be a big day. It's Netflix is going to be the big one, and from a technical perspective, you look at NFLX, that is looking ugly. I mean, this thing was up over 130, and now we're currently sitting at $88. You are coming down towards some demand zones, which aren't great, but I'm not going to try to catch that falling knife. I'm not going to try to sell those puts right now, and I think a lot of people are shorting this bad boy, but I'm not going to touch this one. Earnings on Tuesday. Yeah, really ugly chart. Real ugly. Luckily, it's not part of that Magnificent Seven anymore. Done. Beat it. Naum says, do you think Microsoft will drop below 400? I think we looked at that. Let's go back to Mr. Softy. Do I think it'll drop below 400? No. I at this point, no. Right? I do think you're going to see it drift lower, and I do think it'll come and challenge this gap. So, for the 420 mark does ring a bell for me. It does seem like a logical target. That's still $40 lower, which is about almost 9.5% from current levels. So that would obviously not be great for the equity markets, particularly tech, because Microsoft is the number 2 weighted component in the NASDAQ, and I think it's also the number 2 in the S&P. That would not be good. Keep in mind, let me bring up the NASDAQ 100 weightings. I usually have this weightings W. There you go. I should just bookmark this one because I use it all the time. So Wolf says, if it breaks below 400, NQ will not break all time. Well, of course. It's not even going to get close to it. It'll be struggling big time because look at the weighting. Here's the percentage weighting of Microsoft in the S&P. It's 5.46%. Apple is 5.99%. Nvidia 7.23%. Remember, which stocks have been lagging here? Apple's been dropping aggressively. Microsoft's been looking pretty bad as well. Google's been saving it, but Google's only 3.29% of the index. Actually, it looks like about 6.36 if you add the two class shares together. Amazon's at 4.08, and Nvidia, which has not been doing much, that's a heavy hitter there. But look at the NASDAQ. NASDAQ is definitely a different picture. Nvidia is 13.5% of the NASDAQ 100, and it's not doing much. Apple's falling apart right now, and that's 11.19%. And then Microsoft, which also looks really bad, in my opinion, 10.19%. So you're talking about 22% of the NASDAQ is just Apple and Microsoft, and look at those charts. Drifting lower, drifting lower. I mean, this certainly is going to be a big factor in preventing the NASDAQ 100 from reaching all-time highs. So not so good. Not so good. All right. I think that's going to do it for me. Where are we at? We're at 47. All right. I think I can wrap this show up today. So no show on Mondays. You guys know Martin Luther King Day. Hopefully, Martin Luther King Day represents. It's not designed to be, hey, a day off from work, we have to go party. It's about doing things for your community, making an impact for the positive. So hopefully we'll find something positive to do. I'll be out there looking to volunteer or do something from a community perspective and make this world a better place, because I think that's what Martin Luther King wanted. So hopefully we can all help achieve his dream, because he had the dream. Is the whiskey glass empty? Big Ab, it is now. One last little ice cube clink for you guys over there. But yeah, whiskey glass is officially empty. So that'll do it for me, everybody. Hopefully you have a great Martin Luther King Day. Do something fun and give back to your community. Show a little love to people around you. I will be looking at your forecast. Those of you that sent in your S&P forecast and Bitcoin forecast, I did update all of those. If you are brand new and you have not entered in yet, send in your forecast, what you think the S&P and Bitcoin will be at the end of the year. Send them to tradermerlin@gmail.com or post them down below any of the YouTube videos. That said, go 49ers. It's going to be a great weekend. And absolutely, Wolf, you should listen to that speech. There's two. There's the I Have a Dream speech, which is great. But I love the mountaintop speech. Both of those are just great speeches. I make a point to listen to those every Martin Luther King Day, long before we had Martin Luther King Day. Take care, everybody. Have a fantastic weekend. I will see you on Tuesday.